I can't see us spending $2.5 million. I can't think of a lot of things unless y'all just want me to throw out $1 million bus or something. I mean,
Fraud, waste, and abuse. It says, in the event the grantee becomes aware of any allegation or...
And I haven't seen any ledger sheets on what's gone where.
We did not anticipate this money at all.
And so you're saying that we did not anticipate funds coming in from CARES Act when that's all I've heard for several months.
Welcome back to another Shark Show. And today, filling in for Courtney, we have Melanie Graff, a longtime Hood County resident that is very conservative and very aware of what's going on in Hood County. And thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be here.
If you look at the Commissioner's Court agenda, we're going to be looking at letter B, financial. And it's approved the certification for revenue received after the start of the fiscal year for unanticipated revenue of over $2 million. Now, this is a two-part financial agenda item. One is excess sales tax, which on this show, we're not really going to talk about that. We're more concerned about the $2 million of unanticipated revenue that came in from the CARES Act. So it's the COVID money. And Nate, you were at the meeting. You want to kind of go over and kind of lead us in on what this agenda item is truly about.
Yeah, Mike, so Dave pulled this off the agenda. He had some concerns with it. It was on the consent agenda, which they just passed a bunch of stuff all at once. Dave said, no, let's look at this further. So he yanked it off the consent agenda to talk about the excess sales tax that, we want to be sure where that's going. And then also trying to bring some accountability to how Hood County is spending the CARES Act money.
Right. And, I think a lot of this stemmed from the $195,000 purchase of the RV that the county did last Commissioner's Court when the two new commissioners weren't there, and it was just the Ron and Ron show, and please go back and watch that show. And it was just ramrodded through, and there were a lot of citizens that were upset about it because it wasn't, professionally done. It wasn't brought before the Commissioner Court in a professional manner.
They weren't following procedures.
Yeah, it's just a lot of things wrong with it. The professionalism needs to get a lot better on this court, not just the court, but the people that present the items to the court, because that's a lot of taxpayer money. The players on the financial agenda, item number one, are really Becky Kidd, the auditor, the Commissioner Court, and it should be some Jay Webster. But let's listen as this progresses to some of the explanations. You'll hear Becky Kidd, the auditor, talk about transparency a lot. I think, I counted 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, you could almost make a drinking game out of it.
Yeah, if we don't, we don't suggest you do, but if you want to listen to that 2-3 hour long court, every time somebody says transparency, but you don't get shown anything, it might be something to look at. So let's listen and see our first clip from the Commissioner's Court.
The certification for special revenue received at the start of the fiscal year.
Judge, that's a different one. You've approved the budget amendments.
You're talking about the $1,455,000?
That's a separate agenda item. He's just wanting to go back.
So you're taking the second item first. You're going to take the $1,455,461?
Well, I just want to make sure you approve the budget, the line item transfer first that was under consent. Then we can move on to these, sir.
So right off the bat, we keep getting told that, hey, the agenda's out, they do their homework, they're looking at this, and there's a little bit of confusion. And as we go through this agenda item, there's more and more confusion on the court through some of the members. And you would think maybe the new members, but no, it's the Ron and Ron show that's confused. The others seem to be pretty well up to date on what's going on. And, it's fairly simple. There's 2 items on, this agenda item, and it's CARES Act money and it's excess sales tax. So let's listen further.
Okay. Motion been made by Commissioner Eagle to make the line item transfers in accordance with what you have put in financial B1. Is that correct?
No, on the consent agenda. The items that were on the consent agenda, they're still there unless you want to, where do you want to approve them, gentlemen? I don't care.
That's what I'm confused
Yeah,
about. You want to leave them in consent agenda? We're going to transfer them?
Wherever you want.
We're consenting for them right now if we vote on this, right?
Okay, that's fine.
So once again, we have the conversation of, is this excess sales tax? Is this CARES Act money? The new commissioner, Jack Wilson, actually leans over to the judge and shows him the paper to say, hey, this is where we're at, Judge. We're back to the same old, do your homework, Judge. Do your homework, Commissioner Cotton. He's over there talking about it too. Nate and Melanie, you were both at Commissioner's Court while this went on. Yeah. What did you think it was a mess or what?
As a citizen, I think it really hurts your confidence. It hurt my confidence in my elected officials, especially those that have been there a while. These are just general housekeeping things. And so it definitely makes you wonder, and it lowered my confidence in the people who've been there a while. They're not the new Commissioner Court members.
Right, and I think you look at it and you say, hey, yeah, there could be some confusion here and there, but continually go through minute after minute and seeing the same thing go on, it's back to the old homework thing, Nate, right?
Yeah, it's a reoccurring issue that we've seen, and anytime I go and I'm sitting out in the audience, it's like you can feel when the people around you are starting to be like, are these guys serious right now? Like this is a clown show.
Yeah, and if you look at this item, it does have two parts to it. We're talking over $2 million of CARES Act and another $1.4 million of excess sales tax. And, that's something that they should look at beforehand, don't you think? It ought to be pretty much a done deal.
Well, and what we have a lot of times is our elected officials lean on the bureaucrats, the appointed officials, whatever you want to call them, and they just say, oh, they've been there a while, they know what they're doing, and wink and a nod, okay, everything's hunky-dory.
Let's watch the next clip with the auditor, Becky Kidd.
Under financial, approved certifications for special revenue received after the start of the fiscal year per local government code, section 111.0108. The first one, the unanticipated revenue, the $2,024,415 is the money we've received from CARES revenue. And this is grant revenue, state revenue. You don't even have to declare it, but I wanted to be transparent and make sure that it was on this form.
Okay, so Becky kind of steps in, the auditor, and starts to clarify the things for the judge and the people that are confused about this on the dais. Getting back to the CARES Act money, let's look at the next clip.
We have no itemization of this $2,024,415. And what I would suggest is that we table this till we get a chance to get more clarity on what this $2 million is for. And we've also gotten my understanding is, and I haven't seen any ledger sheets on what's gone where.
So Commissioner Eagle wants to table the motion because he wants to get a spreadsheet, basically, of all the CARES Act money that's been spent or they're putting in to get reimbursed.
Yeah.
And sounds right to me. Melanie, wouldn't you do that for your home budget?
Oh yeah, that's what I think when I see this going on. Is this is not how I would run my home budget, but thank God for Commissioner Eagle that someone's paying attention to the checkbook per se.
That's right.
And he's wanting to go through and get an itemized list and say, hey, we spent $50,000 on cleaning supplies, $200,000 on a brand or 16-year-old RV, this and that, and that I think is a good thing.
It is, and it's transparency, which everybody's talking about. Earlier, Becky, the auditor, had said, it's grant money. I don't even have to do anything and show. Well, if we're getting $3 million, I know you may not have to legally, but ethically, yes, it's time to do what Commissioner Eagle said. Show us that ledger. And it's not being shown. And Nate, you did some Freedom of Information Act requests.
Yeah.
And we see some of the items on there. And we've got a report, it's from February 2nd of 2020 to 1/21 of 21. And you could look through the ledger, and we have everything listed in here from payroll to, I think there's 2 trailers they purchased for about $6,000 each. They purchased a 2021 Chevrolet 2500 Silverado.
Now, real quick, Mike, that Silverado sounds pretty nice. Is that available? Can we all go take a ride in it?
Maybe they needed a vehicle to pull the trailers with all the PPE gear, which, there's a lot that they actually did.
Yeah.
And gave to schools. And, I'm all for using CARES Act money for things that our county truly needs to do to help the citizens out. And, going back to that $195,000 RV, it's explain it to us. Explain to the citizens and the commissioner court why you want it. Oh, hey, since we have Judge Massengill and Commissioner Cotton, it's a rubber stamp.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money, over, $3 million in here. And now we're going to start getting into, you keep hearing transparency, but you don't see any until you do what? Do the FOIA request.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, too, we have to give credit it's due. I think we all try to do that. One of the things they did was they took some of that CARES Act money and gave it to small businesses, though it was funneled through the chamber, and, that can kind of muddy how fair programs like that are. It was still nice of them to at least spend a portion of that $3 million or $2.5 million, helping these businesses that work.
Right. And there's a couple pages in there of $3,000 paychecks to certain businesses and individuals that own businesses, which, in my opinion, is great. It's, the county judge and the governor that shut everybody down to begin with.
Yeah.
Please go to these videos and look at how your elected officials act. We're not telling your elected officials and the judge and Ron Cotton and Dave Eagle to say these things. These are things that they're saying as Commissioner Court is going on. So let's listen to another clip from Becky Kidd, the auditor.
It paid it last court. We did the budget amendment and approved the payment last court for that. That's where your budget amendment came into play. And again, the CARES money doesn't even have to be on this special revenue. And the reason it says unanticipated, because when we did the budget last summer, we did not anticipate this money at all. Therefore, we didn't budget anything.
So once again, Becky's trying to be transparent, Becky Kidd, the auditor, but we don't have any numbers yet. We don't have the itemized details. We don't have anything, and it is unanticipated money. And she keeps saying that, along with the judge, unanticipated. And Becky also spoke about, it wasn't a budgeted item. They went through budgeting in June, July, August. In September, I believe it was 14th, they did the budget from what Commissioner Eagle was saying. But if you go back to July 14th, the Commissioner Court meeting, we're going to watch a clip of Jay Webster, the Emergency Management Coordinator. Now remember, this is July 14th of 2020, but yet we're still here in 2021 in January calling this unanticipated money.
Yeah, it's funny. She kept saying it was unanticipated and they had no way of knowing it was coming, but the clip you're about to show, he knew what was coming.
Exactly. And not only he, but the court that was present knew exactly what was coming. Let's listen to the clip.
Well, the 505 that we've received, how much do we have left?
About 155.
Okay, and you got 155. So out of this 505, is your salary and this person's salary already been deducted, or do we have to take it out of the 155?
So we still have $2.5 million that's sitting over here. Not with Becky, it's just sitting over here. So we got a total of $3 million.
Okay, so Jay Webster in July 14th of 2020 is explaining to the court, that's two people short, how much money. They got over $500,000. They have $155 up front, and they're trying to, get the money to pay for Jay Webster's salary and a new emergency planner salary, along with other things. So they are in the process of planning for this unanticipated money that they're going to talk about in 8 months?
And the reason it says unanticipated, because when we did the budget last summer, we did not anticipate this money at all. Therefore, we didn't budget anything.
So, Melanie, when you look at this and you hear $300 million, they got $500 up front, 20% of that they get to spend. Now they're talking about not only Jay Webster's salary, but emergency planner's salary. What does that look like to somebody sitting in the audience or somebody watching right now this video?
And the court knew what they were going to do. They all knew, but the people didn't know. And I don't believe the people had a voice in it.
And, this was during the COVID time, middle of July. And once again, we've talked about, the COVID CARES Act money is there. And, the equipment, emergency equipment, masks, PPE gear, gloves, sanitization things, whatever, those are needed. And we need to buy these things. We need to buy some things for the fire department because they're going to be making calls and medical calls, and they need to be covered. And I would like to see a lot of that money spent for first responders, both police, fire, EMS, because those are the ones that actually are on the scene, and they're going to be dealing with sick people and injured people and things like that. So that's where a lot of that money needs to be, in my opinion, put. Let's listen further to Jay Webster, the Emergency Management Coordinator.
Come September 30th, we'll turn in my salary and all my expenditures to get reimbursed for my salary. Any expenditures that we have between now and December, once we run out of the 155, we turn into the state through the system that I've got us up and running on, and all of our documentation is up. That's what I've been focusing on, is keeping our CARES Act documentation up to speed, and it's all into the system now. They've got every dime we've spent with every justification up to this point, and so that's what we're doing. And I have to sit down with Becky as we go forward and say, all right, here's this documentation, this is what we're going to need to spend. And so that's some of that conversations where we ended up making sure that we had the money to spend going forward, knowing that we were going to get reimbursed on the back end.
And the reason it says unanticipated, because when we did the budget last summer, we did not anticipate this money at all. Therefore, we didn't budget anything.
And I understand, the money's not, you don't get the money till it's actually in the bank, but this CARES Act money is being reimbursed, and they will be getting the money. So still, how do you call this unanticipated?
You can't. I mean, they're, by definition, anticipating the money right here in July, when just yesterday she was saying that it was not anticipated. It's more this double speak that we see a lot.
And let's listen further. It gets even more interesting on this.
So you're saying we're going to get another $2.5 million?
Well, if I spent that much, yes, sir, we would, but I can't see us spending $2.5 million. I can't think of a lot of things unless y'all just want me to throw out $1 million bus or something. I mean.
Okay, so there it is. It's not an RV, it's a bus, right?
Yeah, now, guys, we're not calling it an RV anymore, it's a bus.
It's a bus. It's a $1 million bus, but now it's only $200,000, so we saved what, 80%.
Well, that gives them another $800,000 to fix it up real nice.
Well, and that's the whole thing, and I kind of know what Jay Webster's doing. He's kind of in charge of emergency management, and people kind of go to him, and the money's funneled and the equipment, and it's up to him to kind of look at what is needed for Hood County. But the head of some of these departments think that they're running the show, and it's not up to Jay Webster to spend the money. It's up to the Commissioner's Court to give the okay and vote on it. And, I don't want to keep picking on Jay, but it's not our words. No. It's Jay's words. And I know he's kind of probably joking about how in the heck can you spend $2.5–3 million on this? But, it's like all of a sudden, let's find something. When right off the bat, they should have been looking at what they're deficient in, and they should already have those things. The volunteer fire department should have a list. Every single department should have a list. The sheriff's department, on items that they need that they didn't put in for capital expenses that they could have used on this COVID crisis.
The other question too is, did they ask these other departments? Did they ever ask them what they needed, or did they just decide what they were going to spend it on? Did they go to the fire department and the other EMS services and ask them what they needed? Were they part of that decision process?
And that's a great question, Melanie. And talking to some of the fire departments and volunteer firefighters is, how do you get that communication to them, and how does that come to court? Well, it comes through the fire marshal. Mm-hmm. So if you have a bottleneck and the fire marshal isn't doing his job of getting the information from volunteer fire departments on what they need, they're not going to get what they need. So there needs to be a whole new, restart, relook at what's going on, and this COVID CARES Act money has really brought some of these problems to a head. And let's listen to Commissioner Eagle on his take.
And so you're saying that we did not anticipate funds coming in from CARES Act when that's all I've heard for several months?
I had no idea we could have got 50,000. We just did not know.
So, what should have been done is if you're getting FOIAs for this, then maybe you should do one for the Commissioner's Court and get this all out in the open. There's that word transparency again. I think people are starting to use that transparency word just for fluff and filler when it actually is supposed to be transparent.
I just Googled the word anticipate. Regard as probable, expect, or predict. I would say that these guys have been anticipating this money for months and months, contrary to what they're saying right there in front of God and everybody.
Yeah, it's probable, it's predicted, it doesn't get much more anticipated. Commissioner Eagle brings us back around to try to do a conclusion of this with a motion to table. Let's listen.
So again, I would like to make a motion to table this item until we've had a chance to get a clear understanding and itemized statement of what is being done with this CARES Act money, because I think we owe it to the taxpayers as to what we're doing with it, considering we passed a budget and didn't plan any of this in it.
The problem with it is, I don't know when they approved all this, but they went out and purchased it. Now it's got to be approved to be purchased with COVID money.
They got to get it
county
reimbursed, yeah.
Yeah, so who approved all these items? They did in court, in the budget, when they approved the normal, operating budget, right? Because the money was there. They put the money in there. Let's listen to this next clip with Becky, Commissioner Andrews, and Commissioner Cotton talking about the money.
What potential strings could we have on the backside of this?
As far as I know, none. It is pure reimbursement money for supplies, salaries, and equipment that we have already purchased.
And identified that it was CARES money,
And identified it was CARES
but we
money.
used our budget money.
And
Now here's the money coming back.
yes, sir. So again, it is your discretion on how to use this money. And all this is saying is, this is what we got. This is nothing that should be out of the realm of.
I tell you what, I'll second his motion. Let's go ahead and get some examination on this and get, I'd rather.
Commissioner Andrews brings up a good point. I think what the Commissioner Court isn't really aware of is all those things on the ledger that, Nate, you got through Freedom of Information Act. All these things, like Becky said, these have already been purchased.
And then the question that I would think is it once, will it be approved by the CARES Act once they see it? Is it something that is going to be approved with that money, or are the people who are over the CARES Act, are they going to say no, and then the county is stuck with whatever they purchased, and it's not covered by that?
And, Commissioner Eagle went over that on what the purchases need to be. And if you look at some of these items on here, most, I would say, most, if not all, would probably fall under the CARES Act, depending on how they explained it. Now, masks and sanitization gear and things like that, kind of a no-brainer.
Right.
But when you start throwing in trailers and vehicles and some other high-ticket items, you better be able to explain and fill in the blanks on that CARES Act form on how you're going to use that. And if it has anything to do what we've seen from Jay Webster and the fire marshal, Mr. Young, well, they got a mountain to climb before they do a professional job with that. So I hope it's just fill in the blank and multiple choice.
Yeah, and we have cities and counties all over this country using these funds, and I guess Texas runs through the CRF Coronavirus Relief Fund or whatever. If it's a bunch of people sitting there, packets here, all the blanks are filled in, boom, everything's approved. I mean, I don't know the government to ever scrutinize its own spending too much, even from one level to the other.
Right. It's just, people are concerned, and they should be that, we've spent county money. We want it to be reimbursed the correct way, the legal way, so we don't have any lawsuits or we don't have anything on the back end that ends up biting the citizens of Hood County.
So as a mom, this is just the way I think of it. Sometimes I make out a grocery list, and one of my kids will put a PS4 on the grocery list. My husband trusts that when he's out flying that I'm going to be responsible with the household budget. So he trusts that I'm not going to go, buy that PS4 that my son snuck on the grocery list. So just an analogy from a mom.
And that's a great analogy, and we all have our home budgets that we have to live by because, we can't print money.
No.
Like governments can. We can't, collect more taxes and more revenue just at the drop of a hat. We had a citizen speak. He had a great insight on this. Let's listen to James speak to the Commissioner's Court.
But I find something disturbing in this CRF terms and conditions. Fraud, waste, and abuse. It says, in the event the grantee becomes aware of any allegation or a finding of fraud, waste, or misuse of funds received from TDM that is made against the grantee is required to immediately notify TDM of said allegation or finding and to continue to inform them of the status. I believe there was an allegation made during the week that these funds, particularly the funds for the emergency wagon, were wasteful, if nothing else. Has TDM been notified? I have no other questions.
So as we listen to James, he's talking about waste, fraud, and abuse and TDM, and that part of the paperwork says, part of the process is if somebody notifies them of possible waste, fraud, and abuse, and then you ask the question, did somebody mention it to TDM about the bus?
Yeah, and I hope that the court or members of county government, whether they're elected or appointed, have the integrity to make sure that they file that allegation with TDM, because that's part of their contract with participating in this program.
And I think it's, going back to the last court, I think it's some citizens had a big issue of how it was presented. They didn't have an issue that it may be needed. It's just that they wanted it done the correct way.
And it's concerning that when he asks that question, it's just crickets. Nobody answers his question, ever.
I think it's pretty telling, too,
And we had finally Nanette Samuelson come up and speak because the judge had made a comment prior to about, this not being tax money, meaning it's not property tax money being spent on these items, that it's CARES Act money.
So the comment that this isn't taxpayer money is a little gray. It seems like taxpayer money to me. And even if you say that's not taxpayer money, coming from the federal government is taxpayer money. The government doesn't produce revenue. It's our taxpayer money.
Well, actually, we talked about it. It is county money being spent first, and then CARES Act money being reimbursed. So the idea of this, it isn't tax money. It's federal money coming down, which is tax money. So people are sick and tired of being overtaxed. And so let's start calling it what it is. It's the people's money.
It's all taxpayer money. There's no such thing as government funds. It is all taxpayer money.
So we can sugarcoat, it's not property taxes, it's not your property taxes, it's still taxes.
Right. I mean, how many different kind of taxes do we pay besides property taxes? We're taxed in so many different ways. And I'm just grateful that she brought that point up.
Right. It clarifies it, and maybe the Commissioner Court will listen and understand that the citizens are tired of being taxed, whether it's federal, state, local, it doesn't matter.
Right.
We want to thank James and Nanette and everybody that goes up there to speak and goes to Commissioner Court and actually sees this in progress going on. And please go to the Hood County website and watch the Commissioner Courts. These are their words that we're putting together and trying to shorten this and put it in a summary for everybody. And some of these things continue to happen. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. We still need transparency, and we still need to make sure our tax money is being spent wisely. And I like the people that come up here and do this, and thank you for doing it. This motion was tabled, so they're going to look at it and get a ledger. And so for today, Melanie, thanks for filling in for Courtney. You did a great job. And Blue Shark is always looking out for the citizens with truth and transparency, the real transparency, not the made-up word. So once again, thank you for watching. Shark Show out.